Hello everyone, it's SpawnPoiint and today we're getting hands-on with the Claw, which is MSI's brand new handheld games console. It comes with a 120Hz touchscreen display, Hall effect sticks and triggers, a 1TB SSD, and an Intel Core Ultra 7 processor. Now I know at launch this had a pretty rocky start due to the performance issues, but over the last few weeks the Claw has had a couple of new updates to both the BIOS and its drivers. So today I'm going to see what impacts those changes have had and if it's still worth buying. But on first impressions, I can tell you that some of these games have had a 150% increase in its performance, so that looks like a really good start. Oh, and just to know, I am on the latest update, which is 108, but I have tested 106 as well. Okay, so in case you're not familiar with the MSI Claw, let me quickly show you what's inside the box. So we have a quick start guide which shows us how to get set up for the first time. Then we get the Claw itself, and this surprised me at how nice it felt. Like I was expecting this to feel really heavy and bulky, but it's nicely balanced. And then we also get a 65-watt power brick and a plug inside the box with a USB-C on one end. Oh, and there's also a couple of user guides in here as well, but that's all we get inside the box. So we've seen a few different handheld consoles over the last couple of years, and if we're being honest, most of them look the same, but they don't all feel the same. Firstly, I like that MSI have gone for this all black design, where the case, buttons and thumbsticks are all blacked out. It gives it that nice stealthy look, but it still looks pretty familiar and normal as far as handhelds go. We've got some MSI branding on the front under the screen, and a little Intel sticker next to that. And then around the back, there's this huge MSI logo on the rear. But other than that, this is quite a clean and nice looking design. But of course, it doesn't have to be all boring and minimal, as it does come with some nice RGB lighting as well. So around both of the analog sticks and the A, B, X and Y buttons, there are some LEDs which you can mess around with in the settings. You can either have these set to a rainbow vibe, a static colour, or switch them off completely. Now personally, I quite like this all red colour theme, but all of this can be changed in the settings to any colour you'd like. Then in terms of what it feels like in the hands, I was surprised at how lightweight it feels. I mean, this thing weighs 675 grams, which is slightly more than the others, but it feels so well balanced that it actually feels lighter. And also the ergonomic design means it fits perfectly in my hands with the grips around the back. And talking about the controls, on the right side we've got the A, B, X and Y buttons which feel really firm. They're not mushy like we've had on some of the other handhelds. And then underneath that is a right analog stick. And what's great about these is they are the Hall effect stick, so there's no chance of stick drift, something we often worry about with the other controllers. And then on the left side we have the D-pad. Across the top there are two bumper buttons, and behind that are the two triggers. And as far as triggers go, these feel firm and really responsive. There's also a volume button, a 3.5mm headphone jack for your wired headphones, and a Thunderbolt 4 port. Now this USB-C port is awesome as you're able to connect it to a monitor as well as for fast charging. And then next to that we have a micro SD card reader and a fingerprint power button. Now the advantage of the micro SD card reader is of course you can expand your storage or install games this way. Then if we flip this around, we have two extra buttons which MSI have called their macro buttons. These are essentially mappable buttons like we often see on controllers, so it means you can program these buttons to any other button or combo of buttons you'd like. Then back around the front we've got four little buttons around the screen. We've got a menu button and a quick settings button which brings up this screen, but more on that later. And then on the left side there's a view button which kind of works like a start button in games, and the other one is the MSI Center M button. This is what brings you to your game library for all of the games that you've got installed. Okay, so the Claw has a 7-inch 1080p touchscreen that's capable of up to 120Hz. I played a few different games on here, including Forza Horizon 5, and overall the image and picture quality looks good. Now bearing in mind this is an IPS panel, so viewing it off-center, the colours will look slightly washed out. It's also quite bright, so viewing it outside or in a well-lit room shouldn't be a problem. Now of course this is a glossy screen, so although the colours will look deeper, it means you might get some reflections depending on where you're using it, but it's a small price to pay for a better image. So this is primarily a PC gaming device, and that means using stores like Epic and Steam are the most obvious places to start. So over the last couple of weeks I've been playing games that I would consider resource heavy and would really test out how this thing would perform. So there are three versions of the Claw, and the one that I have is using the Intel Core Ultra 7 processor. It also has 16GB of RAM and a 1TB SSD, so this should be more than enough for most of the games you want to play in handheld mode. Games like Cyberpunk. I've completed this game once already, and it's one of the best games I wanted to test out today. So at launch, this game was hitting around 30 to 35 FPS, whereas now, since the latest updates, it's hitting around 52 to 56 FPS. This is a huge increase of around 60%. In fact, almost all of the games that I've tested have seen an FPS increase with the new update, and MSI are claiming up to 150% increase in performance depending on the game that you play. So another game that I tested out was Forza Horizon 5. Not only is the frame rate smooth and the response decent, but it looks really nice as well. I mean, it's no OLED with its IPS panel, but it still looks great. Now, playing over the space of a few hours, there were a few drops in frames and the odd slowdown, and that was depending on where I was on the map, but on the whole, this played really well. I was getting around 50 to 60 FPS, although I would imagine Forza Horizon 5 performing even better than this. Now, I'm not one for playing FPS games in handheld mode, but I did test out both Apex Legends and Warzone just to see how they would perform. But to be honest, I wasn't impressed with how Apex felt, as it felt really sluggish and it dropped quite a few frames as well. I actually only played one game and then I completely gave up. But Warzone, on the other hand, played really well, far better than I was expecting. Also, the response and the feel of the triggers are great. Originally, the bumpers felt a little bit soft, but having used it for the last couple of weeks, it now bizarrely feels even better. It's as if they've warmed up and got a little bit more clicky. Now, I can't compare my experience today with the launch edition as I'm on the latest updates, but I actually went into this today assuming I would see awful performance, whereas this has handled most of these games better than expected. I'm sure there are far more games I should be testing out, so if there are any games you want me to check out, drop those in the comments and I might give those a go. Oh, and the Claw also comes with another surprise for me, and that's the support for Wi-Fi 7, which I think is a first for any handheld games console. It means you're able to achieve speeds of up to 5.8 gigabits per second if you've got the network to support it. Now, this is clearly a gaming device, there's no question about that, but as it's running Windows 11, you could, if you wanted to, run this like a portable PC or a mini laptop, so you can navigate around the Windows OS like normal, or you could hook this up to your monitor using the Thunderbolt 4 port and literally use it like a PC. I'm not sure how many of you would want to use it this way, but the fact is, because of that USB-C port, well, you can. So here I'm using it on my desk setup, which is pretty cool. And talking of cooler, when it comes to the cooling, it's got what MSI have called the Intraflow thermal design, which is basically designed to cool the internals. Around the back, you can see the huge vents which span the entire back piece here, and because of how you hold it, you're never really going to cover them either. Now, although this of course does help with performance, it does get hot under use considering how close your hands are to the vents. But now with the performance and cooling, there's always going to be a slight trade-off somewhere, and that's the fan. So although it's not loud as such, once you're playing in any game, you're going to hear the fans kick in. I wouldn't say it was loud enough to be an issue or distracting while gaming, and you could always increase the volume or disable the fans manually if you wanted to. But I'll have a listen to this anyway and see what you think. As for the speakers, well, it's got two front firing speakers which fortunately are not obscured by your hands. And as they are front firing, it means you don't actually need to have them very loud in order to hear them. In fact, these speakers get really loud, and I found around 30 to 40% volume is more than enough most of the time. But have a listen to this and see what you think. But what's great is, if you don't want to use the inbuilt speakers, it does support Bluetooth for your own headphones and a 3.5mm headphone jack on the top to plug in your headset instead. So the Claw does come with Windows 11 installed, which effectively makes it a mini PC or laptop in your hand. It's got everything you'd expect from a Windows OS, including any apps or software that you want to install. But on top of the Windows OS, we have the MSI software. This is what's called the MSI Center M, and it's basically designed to make it easier to navigate and play your games. In here, it will list all of the games you have installed which you can navigate through, and it will show you all of the installed platforms you have as well, so things like Steam, Xbox, and the Epic Store. So when you just want to play some games, you can see them all in one place at a press of a button. You can also see things like the Wi-Fi strength, remaining battery, and the time. And at the bottom, we have a few quick controls, including the user scenario, controller mode, and the main settings. And this is where you can adjust things like the lighting of those LEDs on the front. But then if you press the button on the right side, you get this overlay window. This is a quick settings area that gives you control to things like the brightness and the sound levels, as well as turning the Wi-Fi on or off or adjusting the performance mode. So tapping this will toggle through the different modes depending on the games that you're playing. And what's great is you can change these options that you see here. So if you didn't want to see the keyboard, you could swap this out for maybe the airplane mode. But there are quite a few things in here to enable and play around with, so you can customize this to your own needs. So the Claw is packing a 53 watt-hour battery, which is a decent sized battery for this device. MSI claims the battery on this to last around 2 hours while gaming, and from my testing so far, I've been hitting slightly less than those 2 hours, closer to 1 hour 40 to 1 hour 50. But this really comes down to the games you're playing and what performance settings you've selected. I personally think 90 to 120 minutes is very achievable though. Then for charging, it does come with a 65 watt charger in the box, which will take it from flat to full in about 70 to 80 minutes. This is what you'd want to use if you're gaming while plugged in, as it will charge faster than it's consuming. But you can also charge this from a normal USB-C cable as well, although using the MSI one is obviously recommended. So for example, on my desk, I have a USB port underneath the desk, and I've used this to charge my Claw at least 2 or 3 times now. But yeah, on the whole, the gaming experience on the MSI Claw has been really impressive and far better than I was expecting. So I can only put this down to the Intel and the MSI updates that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Hopefully we will see more and more games optimized, and of course more channels coming back to the MSI Claw just to give it a second review. But if you've got one of these consoles already, let me know if you've seen a drastic improvement in the games that you currently play. Okay, so I hope I've answered any questions you might have had, but if you've got any more about the MSI Claw, please drop those below and I will get back to you. Now, if you tell me what game you would recommend playing on this in the comments, I'll give you a thumbs up for staying right till the end. And if you did enjoy today's video, check out this video next, and I'll tell you why this is my new favourite TV. Well, thanks for watching, please like, subscribe, and follow me everywhere. Until next time.